We studied the country Brazil, which is the fifth largest country both by area and population. Brazil was a Portuguese colony until 1808, and until 2010, Brazil had one of the world's fastest growing major economies, with its economic reforms giving the country new international recognition and influence. Over time, Brazil's population has increased majorly. In 1951, it was only about 55 million people, and now more recently, it is up to about 209 million people. Although it has grown, it is still less than the U.S., which is at about 323 million people. The current crude birth rate in Brazil is 14.69 births per 1,000 people. In 1960, the birth rate was 43.1, and currently in the U.S., the birth rate is 12.36. Overall, you can see a decline in Brazil's birth rate, but it's still higher than the U.S. birth rate. Currently, Brazil's crude death rate is 6.05 deaths per 1,000 people. In 1960, the death rate was 8.1 deaths, and currently in the U.S., the death rate is 8.1 deaths. Overall, you can see a decrease in Brazil's death rate, and actually it is lower than the U.S. death rate. Brazil's current doubling time is 76.9 years. In 1960, its doubling time was 23.3 years, and currently in the U.S., the doubling time is 90.9 years. Overall, you can see a decrease in Brazil's birth rate and therefore an increase in the doubling time.
Currently, fertility rates in Brazil are plummeting. Even with abortion being illegal and birth control often being opposed, the rate still continues to drop. Some reasons are the increase in the female workforce and the telenovela effect. In 1960, women in Latin America had a fertility rate of almost 6 children, and by 2010 it had fallen to 2.3. In 1990, Brazil reported 58 deaths per every 1,000 live births, but in recent years, Brazil has been able to lower its infant mortality numbers. As of 2011, Brazil had reduced the rate to 16 deaths per every 1,000 live births. The main reason is an improvement in the country's healthcare system. These numbers are expected to keep getting lower as the country keeps enhancing its healthcare. Life expectancy is the average number of years to be lived by a group of people in the same year if mortality at each age remains constant in the future. In 1960, the average life expectancy in Brazil was only 54 years old, and in 2014, it raised to 74 years old. It is projected to keep increasing as more years pass. In Brazil, chronic diseases are projected to account for 72% of all deaths. Over 10 million people will die in the next 10 years from chronic diseases. Tuberculosis is on a steady decline in how it affects the people of Brazil, but as of 2010, malaria still affected roughly 400,000 people. Brazil has a very large immigrant presence. The Brazilian government has encouraged migration flows to boost agricultural production and fill its vast territories, and its current policies are implemented to increase migration from Germany, Italy, and Japan. In the 1980s, many people began to emigrate to other countries in search of economic opportunities, and by the 1990s, over 1.8 million Brazilians were living outside the country.
Currently, the majority of Brazil's population is between the ages of 15 and 64 years old. This compares to 1970, when Brazil's population was mainly below 15 years old. And in 1950, it's predicted that Brazil's population will be more evenly distributed among the ages. Based on the birth and death rate, Brazil is predicted to have an 8.64% growth rate in 2016. This is larger than the growth rate from 1960 and the U.S. 2016 growth rate. The expected population growth of 2017 for Brazil is around 210 million. And for 2027, Brazil is predicted to have a population of around 229 million. The demographic transition theory says that as a country's economy develops, its population growth increases. Brazil is currently in either stage 3 or stage 4, depending on the model that you look at. They have a low birth and death rate at 6.05 and 14.69, and a growing population at around 209 million. Brazil has taken a lot of action with family planning and education. 88.9% of women are now literate, and the fertility rate has dropped from 6 children per woman to 1.9 children per woman in only 50 years. Also, 80% of women are now informed and using contraceptives. Brazil is one of the top 10 energy-consuming countries, consuming about 299 mtos. Like most countries, Brazil has had an impact on the environment through deforestation and has cut down almost 760,000 kilometers of rainforest, which is about 19% of its total land.
IPAT is an equation that expresses the idea that environmental impact is the product of three factors: population, affluence, and technology. In absolute global terms, Brazil ranked first for worst environmental impact for reasons such as natural habitat loss, habitat conversion, fisheries, fertilizer use, water population, carbon emissions, and species threats. As Brazil's affluence increases, the country would change for the better. The middle class will grow more and more, and prosperity will spread from Brazil's richer southern and southeastern regions to poorer north, northeast, and midwest regions. Prosperity will also expand from regional capitals and major metropolitan areas to smaller cities across the country. One major environmental impact is deforestation. Brazil is home to the Amazon rainforest, considered to be the lungs of the world, which is being destroyed and releasing carbon dioxide as greenhouse gases, increasing the risk of climate change. Some more issues in Brazil are acid rain, endangered species, introduction of foreign species, air pollution, and waste disposal. GDP in Brazil is worth $1,774.72 billion in 2015. The GDP value of Brazil represents 2.86% of the world economy. GDP in Brazil averaged $610.42 billion from 1960 to 2015, reaching an all-time high in 2011 and a record low in 1960. Sustainable development is possible to reach, but it will be a difficult task, and citizens will actually have to do something to fix the issue, since over 90% of them recognize it is one. The recognition alone will motivate the citizens to start making a difference, and the government needs to start facilitating this effort by doing things like decreasing deforestation and increasing recycling.